William and Kate, people are obviously incredibly curious about you. So let's start with the obvious. William, where did you propose? When? How? And Kate, what did you say?
It was about 3 weeks ago on holiday in Kenya.
Whispered secrets and quiet transformations. But nothing, not even the inauguration of a new monarch, could have prepared the royal family for Princess Anne's sudden break with quiet. There were no cameras present. No press releases were scheduled. It was a private party with only family members. A peaceful room filled with photographs from the past and the impending solitude of an unknown future. Princess Anne stood holding a document in her hand. A single worn envelope bears only the late Queen's seal. She had kept it hidden for more than 2 years in accordance with her mother's final wishes. But now, with the monarchy in jeopardy, public trust dwindling, and Kate Middleton recovering from her own cancer fight, Anne sensed the time had come. She opened the mail, took out a handwritten letter from Queen Elizabeth II, and began to read. King Charles's visage froze when her voice faltered in response to the late monarch's words. A silence descended over the room. What followed was more than just an emotional goodbye from mother to family. It was a declaration, written in ink but with foresight. "Catherine," the Queen had written, "I've watched you develop not only as a wife and mother, but also as a leader. One day, you will be at the heart of this family, not only alongside William, but in your own right. I entrust you with a holy responsibility that may survive beyond my son's rule. You are the heart of this monarchy's future." The consequences were astounding. Kate Middleton was anointed by the Queen as a matriarch in waiting, a guiding force for the next generation rather than a future queen consort. It was a secret decree that no one, even Charles, knew existed. And now it has surfaced at the most vulnerable time in the monarchy's contemporary existence. Charles was noticeably affected, despite already dealing with his own health issues and transitional obstacles. Not because he questioned his mother's wisdom, but because he saw the writing on the wall. The Queen had made plans for a future beyond him. Kate stood at the center. This was not an average epiphany. This was a transfer in royal power, from the throne to the lady who had once been a commoner, but was now quietly positioned to influence the monarchy more than anybody since Elizabeth herself. As Princess Anne folded the letter, one reality resonated in the minds of everyone present. The Queen may be gone, but her word lives on. On the surface, they could not have been more dissimilar. Queen Elizabeth II was born into monarchy and has been influenced by war, duty, and a protocol-driven life. Kate Middleton, who was raised in a middle-class household in Berkshire, entered the royal family by love rather than heredity. Behind the royal gates, however, a connection was silently building, despite the stiff handshakes and choreographed public appearances. One that neither woman ever promoted, but both thoroughly understood. It started hesitantly. When Kate first entered the royal spotlight as Prince William's girlfriend, the Queen watched with polite interest, but did not embrace her. Elizabeth had seen many young ladies enter and exit the firm, some enthralled by the attention, others crushed by its weight. She was not cold towards Kate, she was cautious, but Kate was unlike the others. She did not seek out headlines, she did not fumble for favor, she simply persevered. And over time, he earned the Queen's respect in the one way that counted to Elizabeth: steadiness, composure, and quiet strength. There were moments that the public never saw, but they impacted the bond between the monarch and the future queen. Kate would make small visits to Windsor, arriving alone and with no journalists in sight. Private teas at Balmoral, where the conversation flowed with laughter and shared experiences about parenthood, responsibilities, and the cost of constantly being observed. According to family sources, the Queen was particularly impressed with Kate's ability to reconcile tradition and modernity. She dressed elegantly, but not extravagantly. She spoke softly, but with conviction. Kate, unlike so many others before her, never went too far, but she also never disappeared. When the Queen welcomed Kate to her first solo royal engagement without William in 2012, a visit to Leicester during her Diamond Jubilee, it wasn't just protocol, it was a test. Kate died gracefully. She connected with the general populace. She held her own with the monarch. Something changed starting that day. Behind closed doors, the Queen began to involve Kate in more sensitive issues. She sought her advice on family issues. She asked her to participate in conversations generally reserved for blood royals. Kate was more than simply a duchess at times, subtle and unseen to the outside world. She was a trustworthy confidant. They bonded over their similar notion of duty versus want. Kate, like Elizabeth, had abandoned a normal lifestyle, had given up her privacy, plans, and at times her distinctive voice. However, both ladies recognized that leadership sometimes entails carrying the silence rather than controlling the room. Their bond grew much stronger in the Queen's final years. With Charles preparing for his eventual reign and Harry and Meghan's departure still resonating through the halls, Elizabeth realized the monarchy will require a unifying figure in the coming years, someone who could hold the family together, not just through tradition, but also by public trust. And she saw it in Kate. It wasn't simply about marrying William. It was about Kate and who she had become within the palace gates. A steady hand, a calm presence, a woman who could bear the weight of royal expectations without bending or breaking. By the time Elizabeth's health began to deteriorate, there was no doubt that Kate would be more than queen consort. She would be a legacy bearer, a bridge, a matriarch. So in the latter months of her life, the Queen did something few expected. She wrote the letter, a decree based on love rather than legality. In it, she stated her aims clearly. Kate Middleton was more than just a granddaughter-in-law. She was the woman she imagined would one day keep the monarchy together. Princess Anne has never sought the spotlight. She walked behind monarchs, stood by troops, and advocated for causes that were important long before they became fashionable. To the public, she has always been the royal family's silent force, unshaken, unchanging, and unconcerned by theatrics. But those who know her best understand this. Princess Anne is the crown's compass. Above all, she was her mother's confidant. Throughout Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign, Anne was the closest to her, not by title or inheritance, but by disposition. Both women were realistic, strong-willed, and bound by an unspoken sense of obligation. Where Charles struggled with modernity and emotion, Anne saw the monarchy as an engine that had to remain running, no matter what happened around it. So when the Queen penned her final secret letter, naming Kate Middleton as the heart of the monarchy's future, she trusted just one person to keep it safe until the moment was right. She handed it to Anne. The letter was not shared with the Privy Council, not included in the royal archives. It was given to Anne personally, sealed with the Queen's insignia, and instructed to keep it safe until it is most needed. And for over 2 years, Anne honored her vow. She did not comment after the Queen died in 2022, even as the royal family dealt with controversy, transition, and Charles's eventual coronation. She watched as William and Kate stepped up. The family fragmented more with Harry's memoir, and her brother dealt with the quiet toll of cancer, and she stayed mute. So what changed? According to those close to Anne, Kate's return to public life inspired her to act. Following months of private cancer treatment, Kate returned to the royal arena in early 2025, not with fanfare but with determination. She resumed her patronage, went to children's hospitals, and stood beside William with the same composure that had enthralled Queen Elizabeth. Anne saw what was happening at that moment. The Queen's vision was coming true. This was the time. So, in front of a small group of senior royals, Anne took the initiative to break the silence. She read the letter out loud. She watched as Charles's expression shifted. She handed Kate the envelope, and so a new era silently began. Anne did not talk for attention. She did not seek applause. She acted on duty, like she always does, because Anne saw her mother's final decree as a compass for the future, not just a commandment, one that emphasized stability, trust, and the strength of a woman willing to lead by example rather than power or position. And in Princess Anne's world, when the Queen speaks, even from beyond the grave, you pay attention. And what happens when she places her trust in you? You deliver it, without a question, without delay, and without saying anything more than what was absolutely necessary. It was not printed on royal parchment. There were no embossed crests or gilded trims, just a folded page of Windsor Castle stationery, softened over time and signed in Queen Elizabeth's distinctive handwriting. Despite its quietness, the late Queen's secret edict weighed like a crown. When Princess Anne opened the letter in that closed-door meeting, the room fell silent. Not only had the Queen written something previously unknown, but what she had written astounded even the most experienced royals. "To my beloved family," it started, "I've lived long enough to understand that crowns are bestowed not only through blood, but also through power, stability, and grace. And I've seen those qualities develop in Catherine, quietly and without fuss. She did not utilize her title. She didn't address her as the Duchess of Cambridge or the Princess of Wales. She chose to call her Catherine on purpose." The following was not a legal document. It had no constitutional authority, but what it lacked in legality, it made up for with legacy. This was the Queen's ultimate aim, written as a matriarch rather than a monarch, a grandmother, a protector of the monarchy's soul. "In the years to come," she wrote, "this family may be bound by someone other than Charles or William. It will be Catherine. Her presence is steadying, her instincts are sound, and her love for the people, for this family, is subtle but unconditional." The Queen went on to explain a moral role, rather than a formal or ceremonial one, a position that extends beyond coronations and court processes. "I entrust Catherine with the role I formerly held, not by appointment, but by example, to be the center of this family, to guide when others fail, to remind us of who we are when the noise becomes too loud, to keep together what duty alone cannot." She even mentioned Charles. "My son is a nice man and will be a wise king, but he'll need her more than he thinks." Finally, the cue that took everyone's breath away. "You, Catherine, represent the monarchy's future, not only as the Queen, but also as its conscience. Lead with courage, as I am confident you will. Signed simply, Elizabeth R." There was no flourish, no ornate declaration, just the steady hand of a woman who has governed for longer than any other sovereign in history, handing the torch through trust rather than lineage. The letter wasn't a command, it was a blessing, a map made on the boundaries of tradition, one that hinted at a future led not by kings, but by women of quiet strength. And in Kate, Elizabeth saw what she most valued. Duty is without drama, service without a spotlight, power without ego. The decree was never intended for Parliament. It was intended for the family, a whisper across the decades, a parting message from the Queen to the woman she hoped would keep the monarchy's essence long after the throne changed hands. And now it's been read aloud. The crown would remain with Charles. What about the Queen's quiet power? That now belonged to Kate. As Princess Anne finished reading the Queen's final letter, all eyes focused on one man. King Charles III, seated in an old leather chair beside a portrait of his mother, remained completely still. The room, once filled with regal ceremonial and years of whispered counsel, has never felt quieter. Not since the coronation, not since the diagnosis, not since he realized that the throne for which he had waited his entire life had arrived with so little time to properly hold. For a long time he did not talk, but his face, etched with age, illness, and history, said it all. According to those closest to him, his expression was not one of rage. It was something far more complicated, a blend of pride, anguish, and a profound, nearly wordless resignation. He felt proud because what he had read was unmistakably true. Kate Middleton, now Catherine, Princess of Wales, had become the embodiment of stability in a family that was frequently held together solely through formality. She had stood steady in the face of controversy, personal fights, and shifting public opinion. They adored her. The Queen had placed her trust in her. Charles respected her deeply. However, there was also agony, not because of Kate, but it had not been him. Despite his devotion to his duty and decades spent preparing to lead, his mother's final blessing went to his daughter-in-law rather than her son. And while it did not diminish his title, it did slightly modify the narrative. The king no longer served as the monarchy's emotional center. It was Kate. According to sources, Charles closed his eyes briefly after the reading and placed one palm on his chest, as if to steady the breath that had left him. He looked at Anne and Kate and simply said, "She always did see what the rest of us couldn't." There were no protests, no undermining, just a calm understanding. of legacy, burden, and the crown's unwavering desire for relevance and survival. Charles has long recognized that his rule will be transitional, even before his cancer diagnosis, and before the world questioned the monarchy's destiny. He saw himself as a bridge between Elizabeth's age and one that remains unclear. But what he hadn't expected was that his mother had already set the bricks on the opposite side. She had placed Kate at the center of that walkway. In the days that followed, Charles allegedly spent more time with Kate than normal, bringing her to private briefings, soliciting her opinion on Commonwealth issues, and even sharing memories of the Queen's final months. It was not an abandonment of responsibility, it was something rare. A king recognizes not only his successor's heir, but also the essence of the institution that will go on after them both. Because Charles saw Queen Elizabeth's legacy as more than merely the continuation of a family. It was the preservation of confidence. And now, that faith had been transferred to the woman his mother had dubbed the monarchy's future. It stung, but it was also soothing, because in his heart Charles knew the crown may be his, but the Queen's soul lives on in Kate. When Catherine, Princess of Wales, returned to public life in early 2025 after months of cancer treatment, it was more than just a comeback, it was a resurrection. The world had watched in silence as she disappeared from royal engagements, with only brief words and speculation to explain her absence. But when she reappeared, slimmer, paler, but still standing tall, the reaction was tremendous. Crowds did not simply cheer, they wept, because at that point it became evident that Kate was no longer merely a princess. She was a symbol, perseverance rather than privilege. It is a matter of strength rather than prestige. And, unbeknownst to the world, she had recently been named by Queen Elizabeth herself as the heart of the monarchy's future. It was not a title, it was not a crown, it was something considerably more powerful. A trust decree, sealed in silence and released just when the monarchy needed it most. And Kate, as usual, rose with serene grace. Kate's career, from her days as William's university girlfriend to her ascension to the position of Princess of Wales, has never been marked by flair or scandal. She does not seek attention. She earns respect, slowly, intentionally. Her authority stems from her steadiness, which is remarkable in a royal institution that is frequently rocked by drama. Even the Queen had spotted it. Where others made headlines, Kate provided stability. She has spearheaded big efforts on children's development, mental health, and early childhood education, not for picture opportunities, but for long-term change. She visits hospices, shelters, and schools with the same composure she uses at diplomatic banquets. She understands the public because she was once part of it. She brings that perspective with her into every room she visits. Since her return to royal responsibilities following her illness, her presence has felt different, sharper, deeper. She walks not only as the wife of a future king, but also as a woman who recognizes the significance of her place in history. According to insiders, her schedule has adjusted to reflect this evolution. She has received a more in-depth briefing on Commonwealth matters. She now attends high-level strategy sessions with William and top staff. And perhaps most importantly, she has begun mentoring younger royals, such as Princess Charlotte and Lady Louise Windsor. She's not just preparing to wear a crown, one courtier explained. She's preparing to shape what that crown means. It's not surprising that the Queen recognized this coming. And it's no accident that her final written words referred to Kate as a bridge to a revived monarchy, rather than a relic of the past. The British public already regards her as their queen in waiting, not by title, but by trust. Even during her absence, polls continually show her as one of the royal family's most popular members. Her approval spans demographics. Young folks find her relatable. Older generations find her reassuring. Mothers consider her one of their own. And despite it all, Kate remains the same, never chasing power, but now obviously possessing it. Because when the Queen referred to her as the conscience of the monarchy, it was more than simply a compliment. It was a prophecy, and it is being fulfilled, not with fanfare, but with grace, not with ambition, but with intention, not by birth, but through becoming. Kate Middleton is not merely the future queen. She has already acquired the monarchy's spirit. She was never meant to lead, not by blood, blood, not by title, not by design. Nonetheless, as the House of Windsor reaches a critical juncture, Catherine, Princess of Wales, has emerged as its quiet matriarch, chosen by heritage rather than ceremony. Queen Elizabeth II noticed it before anyone else. Under the tailored jackets and photo-ready grins, beneath the carefully calibrated bows and public demeanor, she found something far more unusual. A lady who could carry the crown without wearing it. A woman who is shaping what the throne means for a new generation, rather than being shaped by it. Her secret edict was not just a letter. It was a passing of the torch, not between rulers, but between minds. From one woman who defined an age to another who may still reinvent it. And Princess Anne, the Queen's most trusted compass, ensured that the torch was not lost to time. Now, King Charles leads with the realization that his reign is about more than just legacy. It is also about preparation. He stewards the throne, certainly, but he also creates a way for a future that has already begun quietly, thanks to the constant presence of the woman his mother entrusted with everything. And Kate? She leads exactly like Elizabeth did, without demanding it, without announcing it, simply by being the one everyone turns to. In a family once ruled by patriarchs, the women now determine its center. Anne is the guardian of tradition. Elizabeth is the eternal sovereign. And now Catherine, the matriarch in waiting, has been formed by service rather than ceremony. The monarchy, which once thrived on grandeur, now relies on trust. Kate embodies this trust through sickness, during transition, through scandal. She has become a constant, the calm, the conscience. She will be queen, yes, but she's already something more. She represents the crown's future heartbeat. Because in the end, Queen Elizabeth did not preserve the past. It was intended to protect the future. And in Catherine, she found not only a successor, but a spirit capable of bearing the calm weight of 1,000 years. Not only a queen, a monarch embodies grace, grit, and love.